doesn't mean that that person ceases to exist in our lives. As Dale said, we do a training, the recruitment training for Health South Baptist Hospital, and we just had a training. And he says something beautiful, and it happens to be in the book as well, that when a death happens, our relationship with that person changes, but doesn't cease to exist. It gets transformed. What happens is that at times it is difficult to understand that at the moment of the loss, because we are in such a deep pain. We are grieving, and we really don't want to go there. But it happens. It happens with time. And at times, we do not believe that that will happen. I can share with you something that happened to me actually when my father died. I share the story because this book contains 60 stories, real stories of losses. I share the story of my father's death. But I will share something that many people don't know. I will say it in the book. I'll share it with you tonight. When my father died, as I said, I was 12. It was a sudden death. We were living in Nicaragua. I didn't say I'm from Nicaragua, for those of you who don't know that. Yes, living in Miami for many years now. And my father was here in Miami, and he died here in a sudden death. I was the youngest of 3 sisters, and my world shattered, totally. As we call our assumptive world, the world we know when we wake up every day, that we assume it's going to be there. It changed. And it was really hard. It was very painful. It was really hard. For many years, I accepted the loss of my dad intellectually. Intellectually. I knew he died. I accepted it. But emotionally and spiritually, I didn't. I carried on that grief. I didn't know at that time. Time passed by, and when I was 27, I think, I had an opportunity to revisit that experience. And it was until then that I really accepted the loss. I accepted it. Besides intellectually, I accepted it emotionally and spiritually. And it was until then that really my life changed. It did. My own growth as a person started because I was stuck. I was stuck in the grief. And all this was that inspired me to embark, I should say, into this path, into this journey. Because I had to deal with myself by myself. In Nicaragua, there were no counseling, no support groups. I had to deal by myself. But that's what really inspired me to get into this and to start studying, about grief and all that, and then to write this book. Because as I say here, the first principle, and this book contains 60 stories, but it also contains a system of transformation that are 11 principles that you can apply to any loss. And the first principle is acceptance. Acceptance. At times, very difficult, but it is important if we want to start the transformation process to move on. Now, let me ask you here. People that have been with me in seminars or workshops know that I like interaction with people. So I would like to ask you, when I say the word loss, what comes to mind? Anything?
My father, my animals.
Your father, so the death of a loved one, the loss of a pet.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Some other type of loss that comes to mind?
A country.
A country. Thank you.
Country.
Thank you. What else comes to mind?
Work.
Work. Yes. Yes. So if we really start thinking, I ask you that because when I tell people, what do you do? Okay, I work with people going through losses, help them, them through grief counseling or life coaching, and they assume immediately that it is limited to the loss of a loved one. But we process many types of losses, different types of losses. Among them, besides the loss of a loved one, loss of health, loss of a pet. They are dear to us, very, very strong. Loss of a job that sadly we are facing right now as a nation, as a country. Financial losses. Loss of other losses, intangible. Loss of dreams, loss of hopes, loss of breakups. So different losses. And what happens is that in our society, we are so used to say, I'm okay, you're okay. We live in a very positive society that only when you are winning or you are number one. Who saw the movie Fuses with Maury here? You remember when he was in a game that he said, oh, we're not number one. He said, what's wrong with being number two? But our society gives that message, be number one. And they really do not educate us when we were growing up how to deal with losses. They don't. Because we continue thinking that we are supposed here to be happy all the time, and when we go through a loss, we do not want to share it. Because sometimes we do not want to show that we are vulnerable or that we are weak. But losses are part of life. Furthermore, in some issues, happy moments also involve losses. For example, when a child graduates, great honors, go to college, happy moment, pride to the family and to the child. But what about that sense of loss that we have? I went through that, so I know what I'm talking about. And I am sure many of you know about that. That empty feeling, that void that we feel.